join as we travel beyond reps and sets,
Yes,
and we explore concepts that are rooted in muscle-centric health. Today, we start off, as usual, with an open discussion where Clifton and we catch up on a few things personally, talk about a Netflix documentary that is making some waves, and we also have a blind ranking
mm-hmm,
again,
mm-hmm.
just to um, keep the tradition going,
Yeah.
right? The main topic, if you stick with us to the end, we discuss. Let me back up a second. You may have had a fitness influencer that all of a sudden disappeared for a few months or maybe fell off completely. And that fitness influencer was always on point with regards to their aesthetic, being in front of the camera as lean as possible, day in, day out. What we want to talk about today are the 5 signs that you are possibly pursuing aesthetic goals at the expense of your health and well-being.
Yeah. And I was really excited when I saw this this topic because I think it is something you see very rampant nowadays, especially with the increased popularity of different social media sites.
Of course.
So, how are things been? How has it been? We're now 2 weeks into 2024.
Yeah, I think things have been as good as they can be.
Yeah.
Like we discussed in the last episode, coming out of some sickness,
Yeah.
right? Knowing when you have to scale it back a little bit,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
We had a
And
lot of different things planned, like going scrubbing through the other episodes and then like seeing us talk about vlogging and stuff is like really, really like you just never know what's gonna happen next,
Mhm.
and
Exactly.
how you have to adapt and change with those things.
Yeah.
You know?
So personal fitness,
Mm.
where are you at?
So I'm still in around 171. I was really happy with the fact that I didn't lose a lot while I was sick because I was only eating like once a day, So I was really afraid that, not training. I went from training 6 days a week to like no training for like a week and a half, you know. So my main thing that was in my head was, damn, I'm gonna be sick. I'm gonna lose all my gains, and all this hard work is gonna go to waste. But when I think about it with a clear head, I'm like, it's a week and a half. It's not gonna. If anything, I might have a little bit of diminishing returns on like some strength. You know what I mean? That once I get back into the regiment and I'm experiencing now, I'm right back to where I was. Um,
What they say, when you take some time off, if you've been steadily working consistently at achieving whatever goal it is, fitness wise, for every month you take off, it takes about a week to come back.
yeah, the half life is
Yeah.
or it's not even half life; it's like quarter life or whatever.
And a lot of a lot of athletes could actually utilize a week off,
Yeah,
right? They talk often, strength and conditioning coaches are programming deload weeks or weeks where they're completely taking off. And they started to study this in the research. Uh, and what they've realized actually was that there is really no difference between taking a whole week off after steadily progressing for 4 to 6 weeks,
mm.
taking a whole week off, or bringing your intensity and volume down by
No,
half,
right?
by completely half.
Yeah.
So um, that just shows you, right? Like if you get sick and you're sick for a week, week and a half, and you're taking that time off, you might actually see
Some
what we call a
improvement.
super compensation.
Mm. Where you're coming back even stronger the next time around.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Right? Now, it's different when you're not sick and you're well because you're
yeah.
eating
That's
enough.
the only thing where I was like, had I had the same level of appetite, I feel like I would have came back stronger.
Right.
The only reason why, and it's not like I'm shy, like I'm still like maybe 10, 15 pounds within the numbers I was hitting before on most of my lifts. Um, the only difference is I wish, like, if I could change something, is like that I was still eating at the same rate, because I might have even gained some more muscle just by the amount of sleep that I was getting at that time. But
Everything balances out, right?
yes, and that's why I think it's important when you are sick to take that time for yourself. That's not a time to be like, okay, I'm gonna push through this, especially if it's like some sort of virus. You know what I mean? That's affecting you. Like, your all the resources need to be allocated towards
Getting
s-
better.
getting better. Putting all those resources to that, not thinking about stressing other sort of demands by training at that time. You
Exactly.
know.
100%. And we're actually going to talk about this today,
Yeah, it actually
right?
bleeds into a bit of maybe the mindset behind people, and why they're training, and why that might be counterintuitive to their health.
So when I picked right back up, um, I've gone now. Last week I worked out one day
Hmm.
when I started to feel better, like a couple days after when I started
Yeah,
to feel fully recovered.
because you were out, like, like I had like a little bit of the body aches, and not and appetite super low, but you were like, it was.
Yeah, for me, it was like one meal, not even a meal a day,
Yeah,
and getting dehydrated
that's another thing.
from, the sickness,
Yeah,
right?
so you don't want to get into detail there.
I mean, I talked about it in
Yeah,
the previous episode, but it was diarrhea and it
yeah,
was multiple days of that.
yeah.
So,
Fun.
so then I started back on Sunday. I went Sunday, then we met up Monday morning,
Yeah.
right? Then I worked out Tuesday,
Mhm.
and this morning I took a break,
Yeah.
right? But my
But
body is aching,
yeah, eh?
and the intensity is probably 80% of what I was doing before,
Mhm.
and the volume I brought down a little bit, knowing that, when you start back, your body just responds with uh, a bigger inflammatory response,
Yeah.
right? So knowing that this is very normal, it's a
Mhm.
normal, healthy response, but I just have to check myself and make sure that I don't overdo it,
Yeah.
right? So
I think our training age, and also our understanding helps us, or at least for me, it helps me understanding I'm getting older, and also how I should be approaching things. It'd be much more difficult for me to understand that at like 18, you know what I mean? Because I would just be like so fixated on say an aesthetic goal or a performance goal that I wouldn't be able to see anything other than that. But with time comes like perspective, and
for
if
sure,
you're looking at it from big picture, you're just looking to get to be healthy.
Mhm.
Like, I never lose sight of that. No matter what the goal is, whether it's aesthetic or performance, it's like, oh yeah, but I also really want to just be able to be healthy. You know.
For sure.
Speaking of healthy, you have some stuff to say about this Netflix show that's out there right now.
Yeah, so I was flipping through Netflix and um, I actually saw that they were previewing it because it was supposed to drop or it did drop um, January,
Mhm.
but I was preing it before that,
Pre.
and I was interested, but then when I looked at who produced it,
Mhm.
I thought, okay, for sure I'm gonna anticipate some biases. Did you
Mm.
ever see the documentary Game Changers?
I didn't see Game Changers.
Because that was the one where uh they were definitely touting a vegan diet and they interviewed a
Unbelievable.
bunch of these athletes who had taken on a vegan lifestyle. And the whole point of that was to prove that you can be vegan and still
Put on
uh,
muscle
put on
and
muscle and be an athlete, right?
mhm,
And that in its own, that documentary was broken down by a lot of leading researchers and people in the fitness industry who have reputable names. So that's another discussion. So the Game Changer producers produced this new one,
mhm.
and it's a twin study.
Yeah, so do you want to give the name away of
Oh yeah,
the study?
so yeah, the name is "You Are What You Eat,"
Yeah,
which in its own doesn't make sense. The name doesn't make sense to me.
but that's a common phrase that you hear.
It is a common
Yeah,
phrase, but so
but the
what are you going
phrase
to be a
itself.
vegetable by eating vegetables?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I don't really quite understand. Okay, granted, the purpose of a lot of these Netflix documentaries are to spin a narrative,
100%.
right?
And documentaries are really good at showing whatever perspective or lens that they're trying to hone in on. So if it's either bringing awareness or touting the revolutionary nature of one thing, in this case it's like, is it vegan?
Yeah, so okay. So they had a set of they really focused on I think it was like four or five twins,
Okay,
like sets of twins.
maybe it would be more maybe it would be more fun if I because I watched the trailer.
Right,
Did you
right.
did you watch it already?
I watched the whole thing.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will try to predict what it is that they came to just from the trailer, and then we can kind of break down through our discussion
Okay.
what I may be
So let
missing
me
to
describe the concept and
okay.
then I'll let you try
Try
to
and guess it?
guess
Okay. Okay, I like this. I
the
like this.
the conclusions.
All right, nice.
Okay?
Okay.
So they took these I think there were like many twins. So like if you actually look at the study, um, there were more twins involved in the study, but they honed in and they followed in the documentary. I think it was like four or five
Yeah.
sets of pairs of twins. Okay,
I think I seen like a
yeah,
girl, and the guys yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So they were randomized. So given a specific task of either following vegan or omnivore. Okay, so omnivore is animal products and plant products,
Mhm.
right? Okay. The vegan group was just plant-based products.
Right.
For the first, I think it was 2 weeks, they used this company, this meal prep company called Trifecta. So
Mhm.
they controlled all the macros.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know what the macros were. They didn't tell us,
Right.
but the whole point of that was to see if
To
to
control.
control the
Right.
quality of. So I thought, okay, this is great,
Yeah.
but it was only 2 weeks out of an 8 week study.
That they had the trifecta meal.
Yes.
Okay.
So for the remaining 6 weeks,
The
they were
8 one.
off on their own trying to follow these respective diets.
Ooh.
Okay.
Okay.
Now they did a DEXA scan, okay, to look at their body composition. They did a VO2 max test,
Mhm.
right? So DEXA scan looks at how much muscle tissue, bone
Body fat.
tissue, body fat, water composition.
Mhm.
I believe it breaks it all down. So it's like fat mass and fat free mass.
Okay.
Okay. The VO2 max is a test for maximum oxygen consumption
Mm.
while they're doing a treadmill or a bike.
You'll see
Okay.
a lot of like premier athletes that are trying to improve their performance. They will do this at like preseason or before their
Yeah.
season.
Just to test it and see if they can improve it.
Yeah.
Um, and then they also had blood work done looking at different blood markers. So like inflammatory markers
Oh, that's really cool.
and
They went in depth then.
yeah, they went in depth, but they honed in and focused on some aspects and results that to me didn't really matter so much. And then
Mm,
they glossed over some other
the bigger,
findings,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
I'll tell you what those are.
yeah.
Um, okay, so you had the vegan and the omnivore,
Mm,
and they were twins, right? They followed them through 8 weeks of eating. They got them to do exercise,
mm-hmm.
but I think they got to choose kind of what form of exercise they wanted to do.
Right, right,
And
right,
there were people who were more sedentary that for sure didn't want to do like weightlifting.
right. Sedentary just meaning that they had low activity through their day to day.
Right. So like one of the twins just walked, didn't want to do anything more than walking. I there were
I think a
some
lot of people can
Yeah.
relate to that.
For sure. There was
Yeah.
B-roll footage of like people doing like some of the subjects doing yoga,
Okay.
and then there was some footage of some weight training, but it was really one set of twins.
I remember the guys were they like surfers? Did I see that correct? Is there any surfing? Maybe I saw some.
Honestly, I can't even remember that, but
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
so there was one black twins,
Mm.
okay?
The girls,
No,
the lady,
guys.
guys.
And
Okay.
they
Yeah. Yeah.
they were already fairly lean to begin with,
Yeah.
and it seemed like they led a fairly healthy lifestyle to begin with.
Mm.
And their father was a bodybuilder.
Oh, say word.
So the father helped the sons actually facilitate a good nutrition plan.
Going into it
No, for the six
for the
weeks,
60. Okay.
for those 6 weeks
Mm.
afterwards.
Mm.
Because remember, it was 2 weeks of being given
Given the
specific
meals and then 6 weeks
meals.
by yourself figuring out.
Right.
Right.
Okay. So with knowing that, what are your thoughts and what do you think happened? So they tested cholesterol levels,
Okay.
low density lipoproteins,
Mm.
LDLs. Okay. They tested different like rheumatoid factors. So there was an inflammatory marker that they checked,
Mm.
right? And then they did body composition,
Okay.
right? So what do you think the results were?
So I remember from the trailer because that's all I'm going based off the trailer and what you're saying to me right now. I remember there was a piece in the trailer where they were showing them the results afterwards, and they were like, "Wow, like look at this difference," sort of thing, and like, "Oh, that graph has a big difference change from day one." So I think understanding what documentaries are, and documentaries, like I said, they're usually meant to bring to light something that the audience isn't aware of. So like think about documentaries on like blood diamonds and stuff and that are going on in like high natural resources in Africa, different parts of Africa, and like how these things are actually mined, or the agricultural system, like what goes into your food and how it gets to your plate in your home or packaging in grocery stores. So thinking of that, I'm thinking that for one, body composition probably changed. Um, Maybe I would say there was there was they looked better, so they were able to slim and reduce body fat. But more importantly, those inflammatory markers were probably decreased. Cholesterol probably went down, if I were to guess. In the strictly plant based, and I remember them talking about how the system with agriculture right now is affecting like CO2 emissions in the atmosphere.
Methane.
Yeah.
Methane.
So I think the big push is like not only is this good for your body, but it's also good for the planet. So in that, look at how these people were able to transform in 8 weeks with all these markers um in terms of their health, but also what it can do for the planet. So I think there's that aspect, and also um when you're thinking about oh my god, I just lost my train of thought.
Okay, so let me give you my thoughts now.
Yeah.
on, because you're
If it come
absolutely right.
if it comes back to me because it was something along the lines of people. If it comes back to me, I'll bring it up.
You're absolutely 100% correct
Mhm.
with regards to the narrative. Okay,
Yeah.
so my issue is that there were two narratives.
Okay, I remember now. The discrepancy that they used to explain the graphs, they over extrapolated how beneficial those numbers were. So like you can reduce inflammation by sleeping, you know what I mean? And other things. And you if you were to plot those on a graph over extending, you'd be like, oh my god, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. So I think a lot of the markers that they used to show this big difference in reality might not have been as significant.
They Two narratives.
Hmm.
There's a lot to talk about.
Okay.
The one narrative is, okay, the overarching narrative is meat is evil,
Yeah.
okay? And we should not be eating meat.
Yeah.
We should steer away from it because it's bad for the environment because of the cows farting,
Yeah.
the methane,
Yeah.
which
It
that is
has
one of the strongest greenhouse gases that that does contribute.
to like
But there's
ozone
also a
layer
bunch of other
issues.
things, right, that contribute to
I would think the
greenhouse gases.
factories and and the other things are probably more our dependence on gas for our automobiles and stuff. I feel like those would have
It's just statistics, right?
yeah
Data can be manipulated to
fit
spin
whatever
whatever narrative,
yeah
right? I'm not an expert in that area,
yeah
and I would have to have, a panel of professionals
yeah
explaining that to me for me to really make a decision about that.
mm,
But when it comes to the health,
mm,
that's when I feel they're they're trying to push something that's not really there.
yeah
Okay? Because absolutely what you said, right?
mm,
Inflammatory markers are going to change if you just decrease your calorie intake.
yeah
And inflammation is not necessarily a very bad thing,
yeah.
where we
It's
need
used a
inflammation.
lot to push and pedal like any sort of products, knee pads or different ointments and rubs and all that. But that's the body's natural response to deal with issues, right?
Yeah, it's stress.
Yeah.
Another thing is, what type of animal products were they consuming in the omnivore category?
Mhm.
Were they highly processed sandwich meats
Mhm.
with a lot of nitrates and different things that are not really good for you? Or was it grass fed, lean beef, which is very healthy for you,
Yeah.
right? So the the twins that I was talking about, right?
Mm,
The two black twins.
mm,
One of them, the omnivore,
mm.
gained 7 pounds of muscle in 8 weeks.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And they said it, but then they just moved on. Okay.
Like, oh, we don't have to worry about that.
We're
Muscle
not
has
gonna work.
nothing,
Yeah.
yeah,
And then
because it didn't, yeah, yeah.
his twin, the vegan,
Mm,
he gained 2 pounds of muscle.
yeah,
Something like that,
yeah,
right? Still fairly significant,
yeah,
especially for being on a plant-based diet.
yeah.
But he also had his father, who dedicated most of his life to building muscle, teach them
Yeah,
how to eat things that have enough protein,
to make sure that you
and then
can
also show them how to work out properly.
yeah.
So really, what is
That was best case scenario. If most people aren't gonna have access to that knowledge nor that person so directly, and we all know how influential coaching and having someone in your corner that is knowledgeable is.
there was a set of twins that um, they both lost weight,
Mhm.
but their body fat percentage went up.
So I think it's important. One of the keys that they were using and why they call it the twin experiment is because when you're doing these experiments, everybody is so different um genetically.
Mhm.
So the whole like spin on it was we're twins give us a unique opportunity to look at people that are genetically the same and look at the difference. So that's why the experience is supposed to be so groundbreaking because we get to look at two people with the same genetics and how the food um affected their results.
The professional from the DEXA company who was grilling them afterwards about like, what were they doing? Were they even following
Yeah,
the protocol? She was kind of, it seemed like she was upset and being very judgmental. And the answers these subjects gave were like, well, you know, I didn't really want to do so
plant
much
based.
strength training. We added a lot of cardio. So they actually did more
Yeah.
cardio.
We're gonna talk about how that can be. I mean, we've talked about it in previous episodes, but we're also gonna touch on it again today with our main topic. But we know that that's a no no,
Another thing is,
especially in replacement of strength training
right, right. A couple of the vegans that they followed, or the twins that were put in the vegan group,
category. Yeah.
they were, they also couldn't, I don't think they really were very compliant with the diet,
Mm,
which is another big problem
yeah.
if you're trying to push a diet or a way of living and a way of eating. If it's not if it's not easy to follow, then is it really going to be effective?
Yeah. And that's why when we look at these sort of more fad diets or anything like that, uh, we look at the sustainability as one of the markers of how good that diet is. Um, if it's not something that you can see yourself doing for the foreseeable future, you'll probably be better off finding some ways that you can integrate foods as opposed to demonizing and educating yourself on how to get these foods in and around your diet so that your when holiday season comes around you're not scrambling.
Exactly. Another
Yeah.
interesting finding was they looked at visceral fat based on the
Mm,
DEXA scan,
okay, yeah, this is
and
very what
what
they
they
find.
noticed with the black twins,
Mhm.
okay, the the vegan twin,
Mm.
actually his visceral fat went down to almost nothing,
Oh wow.
which was to me was
Yeah,
pretty significant.
that's amazing.
Then the omnivore twin, his went down, but it wasn't substantial, but it wasn't high to begin with. They both
Mm.
started at around like 11% body fat. So they were
Which is
fairly lean to
yeah.
begin with. But both of their goals were to build muscle.
Mm.
Okay.
So if you want to look at that's the like strange thing to me looking at it is from the outside looking in if the goal was to build muscle and somebody has done more in that pursuit, why is that being glossed over? But
Exactly.
I think I want to do like a deeper dive on episodes. I'm curious for you guys at home if you want to do like an episode where we go through each individual episode and kind of break down. You can kind of like watch along with us. So let us know in the comments below if you've watched the show You Are What You Eat, the twins experiment, and also if you'd like to hear more about this documentary. You know?
I already had clients come in saying, yeah, I'm thinking I want to do more plant based.
Yeah,
And I knew for sure that they watched that.
yeah. Because when you think about health, we talked about this already, but you think about cardio, you think about cutting carbs, and you think about, you know, for some people that means cutting out meat as well. Like, oh well, I don't want to have these foods, and there are indications, and there are circumstances where it would be advantageous for you to maybe stay away from red meat and things like that. Um, if cholesterol
Let's
or
talk about that for a second
yeah,
because,
there are implications where these things would be
okay,
necessary, but that they're in a window. You know what I mean? Where you're getting because you've done so. much to get yourself out of homeostasis that now you need to supplement other things in place of that, or take them out of your diet in order to get back to an equilibrium, and then you can slowly administer those things back into your diet.
LDL apparently is not an issue if you don't have heart disease to begin with,
Yes.
right? So cholesterol, focusing on your blood cholesterol may be a waste of time is what I was getting at. We know that it's a problem if you already had a heart attack, then minimizing your LDL will help to minimize the risk of progression of your atherosclerosis. So basically, when the arteries start to narrow because of plaques that build up. But what we do know is that stress is a bigger factor when we're thinking about atherosclerosis. So, actual being in a level of or a state of fight or flight for too long consistently. That's a whole nother.
Yeah, I was
That's
about to say
the
that.
whole point of this is that there's so many things that and variables you have to consider. But when you're trying to force a narrative by just highlighting some of these negative things and scaring people, I think that's wrong.
Yeah. And that's ultimately why we talk about having a critical lens when you're looking at any sources of these documentaries, or anybody spewing that this is going to be a thing that changes everything. More than likely there is somebody else who's already tried that or talked about that, um and they're just putting a more modern twist on that. And we see that even in terms of training, like you see a lot of the Mike Menser stuff coming back into the fray,
Yes,
in
I've
terms
seen
of,
that.
yeah, in terms of training, and like levers that you can change in terms of intensity. So it's not about one thing, it's about what works for your unique system, you know. Um eh,
And you have to constantly be shifting.
yeah.
Doing high intensity, lower volume exercise where you're just doing one set to failure
Mhm.
can give you gains until it's not going to give you gains.
Yep.
And there's a hard plateau
Yeah,
with
yeah,
that type of training, and that was proven with um Mike Menser when his philosophy was proven to be not the best way to
yeah,
train.
yeah.
So why is someone bringing it back? But I know there's
100%.
someone in social media
That's bringing it
that's
back.
bringing that back,
100%.
and everybody's jumping on that bandwagon.
Because there's always this, the phrase is, there's someone newborn every day. You know what I mean? So there's always going to be people speaking on things um as if they're some new concept, or just repackaging old ideas into a more modern, fresher look. But that's why it's important to look up on these things, and that's what we want to bring. um
My experience is that when something goes well for me, I'm pushing that and I'm telling everybody about it.
yeah,
But what I've noticed is it's all about constantly evolving,
yeah,
and your body gets used to a certain way of
whatever.
training
Mhm.
and even a certain way of eating, and you have to
Change.
switch it up. You got to change it up to continue to get gains.
And that's why, if you are someone who, like, let's say, the plant based, you're moving to plant based, you're probably slashing a ton of calories. You're probably not, if you were someone that enjoyed meat, that like bacon, all these sort of things, you were probably maybe pushing it too far the other direction. So the reason you feel so revolutionary in this is not to say that there isn't any benefit. It's to speak to, well, how far the other way were you? Why is it that moving these markers had such a big impact on you? And there's more juicy information to be taken from that questioning of why this works so well, than to say this is the Lord and Savior has given me this opportunity to relay this new prayer of like the best thing ever, you know? So um yeah, let us know because we would love to jump into these because there's a bunch of different like documentaries and stuff out there. I want to shift this into the blind ranking real
Okay.
quick. Um and see what it is that you have for us today. Okay. Um I want to get into um the types of equipment
Okay. Let's do it.
that you would
So I'm ranking.
you're ranking.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, back on you.
So the topic for this blind ranking is gym equipment
Mhm.
or workout equipment.
Yes.
Because you're gonna send me some like different types of workout equipment. I'm gonna rank them.
Yes. So um first piece of equipment is we're gonna go free weights.
So
Um
dumbbells, barbells.
Dumbbells, barbells, kettlebells, you name it. We're putting free weights. Where are you putting that in your ranking?
I'm gonna go number one.
Number one out the
Number one, right
gate.
out the gate.
Number one.
Yes.
Okay. We'll dive in. We'll dive into it. Let's. I'm gonna rapid fire you now.
Okay.
Okay. Um. Let's go with machines. So we're looking at hack squat, leg press, some sort of shoulder press, chest press machine. Where are you putting that?
I'll go number two.
Number two. Oh, we're going right in order.
Right in order.
Okay, I'm gonna say resistance bands, booty bands, those sort of things. Mm.
So I use a lot of resistance bands with clients.
Hmm. But
I'm
we're
gonna go
talking
number
about
three.
full. I'm talking about equipment that you can use for full, complete workout.
Okay, I'm going number three.
Number three.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna have some discussions. Now we're talking about aerobic machinery. So aerobic machinery, I've never said that in my life. Cardio machines. So you're looking at your treadmills. You're looking at cycling bikes, stationary bikes.
I'll put that at number five.
Number your
You
face
know,
didn't
you know
even.
my
Yeah,
my
it's like
preferred
good.
my preferred form of cardio
Yes.
is walking.
Yeah.
Okay, now if you are training for an endurance competition,
Hmm.
you're gonna do the respective modality. So
Yeah.
if it's a run, if it's a marathon, you're gonna practice running,
Yeah.
right?
Best thing to do is get out there. If you're trying to get better at basketball, you should be probably shooting. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? And last but not least, in at number four, we have our
This is not last because we got five, right?
yeah, but you're already
Oh, I'm at four.
yeah, you're at
Yes,
four.
I'm at
This
four.
is
Okay,
this is your number four spot.
right. Okay.
Number four spot. Yeah.
Yes, that's
Um.
right. Yes,
So this is just body weight work, body work. So,
beautiful. I
yeah,
love it.
it's the equipment that we are given with our everyday. You know.
I would even maybe put body weight above bands,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I kind of set you up
I'm
there.
okay there. I'm
Yeah.
okay with it like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we know how we feel about cardio equipment. The one that surprised me, I thought resistance band would have gone down a little bit lower. Just because um progressively it's really hard to scale. I feel like you know what I mean because there's only so much that you can get with resistance bands if you're solely using just bands.
If you couple resistance bands with body weight calisthenics,
That's probably the
that's a beautiful combination.
yeah. So
Okay.
like push-ups with the band and then progressing the push-ups as well as the tension or strength of the band.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
there actually if you know what you're doing,
Yeah.
you could do a lot with resistant bands.
To a certain extent, I don't know if you're building an excess amount of muscle to like the bodybuilding level
You
with
100% can.
yeah.
You just need a tighter band. And there could be very, very tight bands where you can't even curl it. Like you have to press it.
In order for,
And the resistance increases as the band stretches more,
yeah.
right? So it's
Yeah.
different than, let's say, a machine
Mhm.
or a free weight. It's a different type of tension.
Yeah. I think it has its place in conjunction with other movements, but resistance bands on its own, I think, is overrated.
Have you done it?
I've done them, but I don't
Have you done a full 6 week of progression with having adequate resistance
with just
with
bands.
just bands?
No,
Well,
but I also how strong because you gotta think the toughest band is what like 20 pounds
oh,
of tension.
no, man, you can
I'm
get
talking about like the ones you get in like on Amazon. You know what I
you
mean?
get
Like
60, 70 pound bands.
okay, I've never
Like there's
seen that.
good
I haven't.
quality bands out
Okay,
there.
okay, okay.
And there's those woody bands, right? That are even thicker, like the big loops,
Yeah.
right? Those can really increase in tension. It just gets a little awkward with certain movements.
That's what I'm saying. Rounded full physique.
Do you
I don't
need
know if you're getting that with resistance bands.
There are some bodybuilders and bodybuilder coaches that
It's
they
always,
tout never going lower than 15 reps.
but in my head, that's bands are most beneficial, and I'll go out on a limb to say they're only beneficial in conjunction at the advanced level with another modality of training, so like free weights or a machine, to add more tension at the bottom portion of a lift. So putting a band at the end of a leg press so that you have tension not only when you're in the bottom phase of your lift when the weight's coming down, but also when you're pushing out.
So you're talking optimization.
That's why I see the band. I don't see the band as like a driver because I don't see no one with a at home band machine passing a certain physique with just solely band.
There's a guy who actually sells a band system
Hmm.
and he's pretty jacked. Now,
Yeah,
I
but
don't
we
know if he
know like
developed.
that doesn't mean nothing.
He
Like
claims that he's never used
I'm calling cap.
free free
I'm
weights or
calling
whatever.
absolute cap. Yeah, like Adam, what are we talking about here? Like, does he sell it on his website? Let me guess. He probably sells it or he's in the development of that. His whole life is tied into that. That's what I'm saying. With my understanding of resistance man, if you are someone who is on the lower end beginner, same thing like body weight exercises, there's gonna be a cap on how much muscle you're gonna be able to
Remember, I
build.
didn't put it at number one.
No, I know, I know, I
I
know.
put it at number three.
I think you did. I think you did a great job.
Yeah.
I I thought it was gonna be. I thought it was gonna be lower.
But then cardio would end up in the middle,
Yeah, you did. You did.
right?
You did well. You did well. You did well. You did well. I just for me, I was like resistance bands. I feel like is one of those things that are so overestimated as to how much bang for your buck you're really gonna get. I think after a month, you're probably maybe two. You're probably out of that
But there are
range.
other benefits, right? Like
Yeah.
having it at home, being able to put it in your luggage,
Yeah.
not having the expense of going to a gym.
Yeah.
So there are other pros. And if someone's goal is to just maintain muscle or gradually, slowly improve their muscularity,
Mhm.
then that might just be the best option.
I think context matters. If, like I said, if someone is a beginning in the gym, low budget bands, any band in conjunction with bodyweight movements is going to be you're gonna be happy with what you're seeing from that. You know, I just think the cap comes a lot earlier than people
Want to admit.
wanna admit.
Okay, that's fair.
Personally, that's where I am with the bands.
Now, would you have placed free weights before machines, or are you more of a machine
No,
guy?
free weights, I'm right there with you because that you can always progressively overload really easily. It's a very easy metric that you can use. Um, I think in terms of how you can load it against your body, I don't think there's a reason we haven't found another way to, like, there's a bunch of different designs that are coming out for different dumbbells, but they stay the same. You know what I mean? Barbells and dumbbells have been around since like like the beginning ages of bodybuilding, you know? And I think that's for a reason. It's just because of how well and easily you can progressively overload, because people forget all of these things, all of this is technology that has allowed us to work to improve muscle tissue and muscle density. So, or just not muscle density, muscle tissue.
There are some gyms there out there,
Mhm.
and there's some machine companies
Yeah,
that are creating some fantastic machines
yeah.
that I've never tried, but I see them online,
Have
like
you seen
Panada, Prime.
have you seen the ones where it's like it gets progressively more challenging with
That's
each
that's
rep?
isokinetic,
Yeah.
I
It
believe,
it's like it was fascinating to see, because it's like even
or it
doing.
increases it through the strength curve,
Yes.
or the
So your
faster you.
reps, you will literally only be able to do like 8 to 11 or 12 or something like that, and you'll be done.
I
Like,
think I was watching this one video. I think it was Mike Thurston, and he went to this like longevity place in Dubai,
okay.
and they had one of those machines,
Yeah.
and like they took you through these different stations. Like there's like a red light station. There's like a bunch of different ones,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and the last station was a strength. It was one of those machines.
Oh,
It
wow.
was pretty cool, but I know they're expensive
Yeah.
for sure.
No, yeah, yeah. These are not cheap. I mean, if we're going from the band to this, where this is like after you've trained and this is your life, and you're just trying to eke out that last like 2% of potential gains that you might be missing out on, you know. You're maybe looking at that this is more like sciency. How do we get the most bang for our efficiency wise? Are, like, we use the term junk volume. This is the answer to getting out more of that feel bodybuilding and training that you hear. Like, well, I feel this. It's like, no, these are the days you train. This is how long you train. This is the reps, and it's very much based off of your own data that you're getting from these machines. It's very, very cool stuff. But it does take the some people would say the art and the feel of training the out of it, you know?
Like, can't agree more
Yeah.
with that.
So main topic and discussion today. You wanna lead us in?
So the five signs that you are pursuing aesthetic goals, so the beauty, right, over your health and well-being.
Mhm.
So overlooking what the important aspects of fitness and health really are just to chase a specific look.
Mhm.
And we often get caught in this body focus uh, state of mind,
Mhm.
and often we have to and check ourselves before we wreck ourselves, right? um, so we want to just discuss five. There are more signs out there, but I think these are like the main ones.
Yeah, that you'll see in day to day.
Yes. So the first one,
Yeah.
extreme dietary practices.
Oh yeah.
So what are some extreme dietary practices that you could think of?
I've heard of water diet, where it's like you're only drinking water.
So water fasting.
Yeah.
Yep.
But like you're literally not eating. You know what I mean? You're literally not eating.
That's
Um,
called starvation.
yeah. Like, that's what I'm saying. We've gotten to the point where we are calling these different fad diets or whatever, and these are just people's, so you know, it's a real privilege that we have where you can choose just to, like, I'm not gonna have food, like, water diets, keto, carnivore diet. Um, what else? What are some
At the
other
end of the
ones?
day, a lot of it is just low calorie, so cutting your calories,
Yeah,
right? Cutting out, like you mentioned, specific food groups, like an entire
macros
food
and
group.
yeah,
And why is this not good? Because it's very sustainable.
yeah.
And why do people do this? First of all,
I think most people do it because they were more excited. They are more focused on getting there as quickly as possible. So the
and they see
process.
and they see their buddy, they see their friend
Mm,
or family member that went on a keto diet
yeah,
and lost
30,
30, 40
40, yeah,
pounds. They're
in
like,
like
oh,
two
maybe I should
months.
try this.
Yeah. So it's, but what they're seeing is the best projection of that. And they're not seeing maybe the other parts that they're not showing them about, like irregular, like bowel movements, um, not being able to have the same amount of energy, mood swings, all these other things that come with extreme dieting, or extreme fluctuation in calories that you're having for like weeks at a time, you know. Um, I also think people are more concerned. We talk about the process all the time. The process is a long one. You know what I mean? Um, and the thing with human nature is how can we make it better, faster, stronger, quicker? So that's where the pills, Ozempic, and all these different like fat loss, fat burners, and these things. That's when I think it really gets dangerous because these things are meant for sometimes completely different medical purposes, and they're dwindled down to their side effects. These are side effects that take place after using these things, um, and now we're led to just use this as the main driver for why this thing is working or not. Um, I think that's why you see more people. It's quick. You're gonna be able to see those results. There's nothing more demoralizing than training for X amount of time and then not seeing the changes that you want, So, um, as long as people are seeing results, then people are more concerned with that actually happening and coming as a part of what they're doing, as opposed to just trusting that this will eventually get me to where I want.
That's exactly that's exactly it. And that also touches on one of the other five, right? But coming to our second point, excessive cardio once again
Yeah.
comes up in
Yeah.
another podcast.
We're gonna be talking about this. There's a reason it was number 5, guys, on
And
the
it's
blind ranking.
excessive cardio or cardio only
Yes.
plus dieting at the same time.
Yeah.
And uh focusing on this for body composition changes is definitely going to lead you in the wrong direction,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that is a very, very common one.
Yeah.
Um, the thought is, okay, you're going to do resistance training, and that's going to make you heavier. And the
Yeah.
goal is to
Yes.
lose
Yeah.
pounds, right? Because being thinner is going to be more aesthetic.
Yeah. You'll see a lot of disorders come from this. Like models traditionally have the worst relationship with their food, like runway models and people from that profession where so much of their work comes from their body. Where you'll see bulimia and to
Anorexia.
anorexia, to the point where it will, like I said, once you start messing with the natural or occurring things that happen in your body, like for females, uneven menstrual cycles and all,
When you
and
get to a very, very low fat
yeah,
percentage,
yeah, like it's we're not meant to be that low body fat. Fat is not inherently bad. It's the overconsumption or over indulgence or over presence of fat that we want to tackle, not demonizing one macro over the other. You're doing the exact same thing. by saying that?
People just want to burn calories, and they feel, based on what they know, cardio is going to burn the most amount of calories
Yeah,
at the end of the day,
yeah.
which means calorie is not every calorie is not equal.
Yeah,
A calorie is not a calorie because depending on what. Okay, so
that's a
that's a
yeah,
heavy
that's a
topic,
yeah.
but the way a calorie of protein is processed and assimilated in your body is
Is
different
way different
than a
than
calorie of table of sucralose or sucrose,
yeah,
right? So
and
table sugar.
the reason that's a different conversation is because there's a lot of like research that like goes against, like I watched a video about like 1500 calories of eating all donuts is the same as having 1500 calories of like whole foods in it, you know what I mean?
That's
And
complete BS.
I was like, but there are people in the comments, you know what I mean, that were swearing down that it's the same thing because they're going at it from a thermodynamics perspective and through an energy expenditure. But the body does not process um, things like that, and you can actually um, decrease your ability of digesting these things and actually absorbing the nutrients. And yeah,
Well, there's first of all no nutrients in it.
yeah. So there's nothing to absorb, and then you have no fiber to actually get rid of it. So that's why I say it's not as simple as yeah, 1500 in versus 1500 all equal. So to Andre's point, not all calories are equal, and they are marketed to be so that people are more concerned with the number. As long as the number is low or whatever, then I'm good.
Yeah, low calorie foods,
Yeah,
marketed as low calorie.
low calorie
It's
food.
better to eat just all these low calorie
Yeah,
foods, right? When truthfully, it's better just to have a lot of fiber
yeah.
because the fiber lines
Your gut,
your
your
gut and also your
colon.
small intestine,
Okay.
and it will prevent certain nutrients from going through so that it can go to your colon to feed your gut bacteria.
Yeah,
And when you eat more fiber, you will actually um, utilize less calories in your diet because the calories are not going to be stored as fat. They're going to be utilized for your gut bacteria, which needs to be fed.
yeah,
Because if it's not fed, it just eats at your lining.
yeah.
The gut bacteria is just going to continuously eat at your mucosal lining.
There's so much benefits that you would naturally get from, and that's why most health professionals will speak about having whole food because whole foods usually have a balance of fiber to protein, fat,
Good
healthy fat.
ratio,
Yes.
right?
Okay. So, did we finish up cardio there? Did the
I think the
so
main message is cardio is not going to help with body composition, cardio alone.
yeah.
We talked about this study before, but the cardio plus strength group burned even less fat than the strength alone group.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if your focus is cardio to burn calories, to try to lose fat, you're missing the boat completely.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen is you're going to potentially or probably lose
You
muscle.
probably no. Most people will, if they're staying on a certain uh regimen of food or staying in their calorie deficit while also doing excessive amounts of cardio, but the wear and tear that it's gonna have on the body, you're not actually getting stronger, so you're actually more susceptible to injury afterwards. You know,
Bone density loss,
I
muscle
mean,
density loss.
increased inflammation, um, effects on we talk about it. We're gonna talk about it a little bit later with like libido, hormone production,
course.
Yeah.
All right, so that brings us to our third point.
Yes.
So first, let's just recap: extreme dietary practices, excessive cardio
Hmm.
while cutting calories,
Especially without the presence of resistance training.
right? Third, ignoring mobility deficits.
Yes. So when you wrote this, I initially had to like read it over a little bit more. So I'm curious. Break that down for people.
Okay, so let's describe what mobility actually means. Okay.
Yeah.
Mobility is having a range of motion that's adequate for the movement that you're trying to do or the exercise you're trying to do or life in general.
Mhm.
Okay. So having the range of motion, but also being able to own that range of motion by stabilizing your joints adequately.
Which is different from flexibility, which is just the ability for
The
a
joint to
to
move,
joint. Yeah.
right?
To move
Like,
at about a joint. Yeah.
exactly. So having a mobility deficit is very common in our society, especially for people who don't exercise a lot.
Mhm.
So when they start doing squats, overhead presses, bench press, they don't
Yeah.
have the mobility in certain areas of their body that are there is a prerequisite to do the movement properly. Younger gym goers
Mhm.
that don't have the mobility but just want to move a
Wait.
significant amount of weight, they often find themselves injured
Yeah.
or they develop movement patterns that lead to injury.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you've ever seen the like I see this a lot in the gym when we go or when I'm just by myself, the 40 to 60 or 50 to 60-year-old that is doing God knows what in terms of a movement, and you're just like, where did these habits come from, like shoulder pressing here or anything? It's That's because that's what they've been doing since they're 18. So now as their bone starts begins to deteriorate, their range of motion already in that deficit, or sorry, that mobility already in that deficit is only going to be super highlighted when you're older if these things go unaddressed. So you only get strong in maybe half of the range of motion as opposed to the entire, which wholeheartedly happens if you are just focused on an aesthetic goal. A lot of guys I find, I think across the board, I can only speak for what I've seen and what I've experienced. A lot of guys are much more stubborn to get outside of their own idea of how they lift, and be open to maybe learning something new that might actually put some life
Sure.
into their training.
Exactly. There's a concept called regional interdependence. And
Love
this
that.
is a concept, a theory that I use heavily in my practice
Mhm.
as a physiotherapist. So the concept is that our whole body functions as a kinetic chain. Okay, so you have interchanging mobility and stability joints based on the architecture of the joint.
Mhm.
So to keep it very simple, okay, going from the foot up the chain all the way up to the head, okay? The foot specifically is more of a stable segment, okay? The foot. The ankle is a more mobile segment. The degrees of freedom, you have the ability to move your ankle in
More malleable. Yeah.
more planes of motion. Then you go up towards the knee, it's a stable joint. So the main movement is a hinge. Okay, so the knee
Extension,
will
flexion.
extend and flex. So straighten out and bend. There's a little bit of rotation that occurs, but it's minimal. Okay. Then you go up to the hip. Once again, a mobile joint, right? You can flex it, extend it, rotate it, adduct it, abduct it. So basically move it in all planes of motion. Then you go up to the SI joint, right? The SI joint is basically the joint between the tailbone and the two winging pelvic bones. That is a stable joint that doesn't move much at all, right? It starts out as a planar, smooth joint, and then as the infant starts to stand, and then the becomes a toddler, and the toddler starts
Starts
to
to
walk,
walk.
that planar joint starts to become more um,
Malleable.
um, it's called fibrillation. The fibrillation of the joint surfaces creates more congruency
Mm.
in the joint. So it goes from being like this to now like the knuckles interlocked.
More rigid, more strong,
Right. Because
as
it's
it
a
needs to
weight
be.
bearing joint.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you go up the chain even more into the lower back. The lower back is really also fairly stable, stable segment of the spine, right? The lower part really only extends, bends. There's a little bit of rotation, but the architecture doesn't allow the rotation to happen. Then you go into the thoracic spine, which is the mid upper back. The architecture of that area allows rotation, side bend, extension.
Mm.
Okay. Then we go into the limbs. The pseudo joint of the shoulder blade on the back, right? There's rotation that occurs. There's internal rotation, so pronating, retracting, protracting. Okay, that's a pseudo joint. It's not really considered a joint itself, and that area has to be very stable based on the muscles and the attachments. Then you go into the shoulders, specifically the shoulder joint, or back up the shoulder blade as it articulates with the collarbone. Okay, the AC joint. This is the joint that you can separate, in a hockey check or diving for a ball in baseball,
Mm.
or just falling on your shoulder. You can separate that, and then
Yeah.
the collarbone
Less.
pops up,
Yeah.
right? Then going into the ball and socket joint of the shoulder,
This
once
is like the
again, the
glenohumeral.
glenohumeral joint has a wide range of motion, lots of degrees of freedom. Okay. So that can move around really well. It should, anyways. Okay.
Most people it doesn't because of this same thing with ego
We'll get to
lifting.
that.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is how the body should be working.
Right.
Then the elbow. Okay. The elbow is also really a stable joint because it flexes and it extends.
Right.
Okay. It's really at the wrist where the supination and pronation occurs, and then also extension, flexion, and
Abduction.
deviation,
Yeah.
ulnar deviation, radial deviation. So you get the point, right?
Mm.
It's interchanging from stable, mobile. Now, what happens if either you don't have good stability in a stable joint, like the ligaments that attach bone to bone, or the joint specifically is loose? There's going to be an issue with
Some sort of
with some
uncomfort.
sort of
Yeah.
mobility,
Yeah.
or and then if you don't have adequate mobility and range of motion in a mobility joint like the hip or the shoulder, then some of the areas, the adjacent area
It's gonna
that is
be.
supposed to be stable starts to move excessively.
Yeah.
And when that stable area starts to move more than it should, then you run into problems.
That's when you have chronic pain. The androgynous zones that we hear all the time, or not the androgynous zones, the main zones that we hear all the time. Low back specific because it's not supposed to be
Moving
moving,
excessively.
and because of um instability or lack of mobility in the hip or muscles below or above, we see the low back have to move more.
We also see people who have lots of mobility in their hip, like excessive, and then they don't have the dynamic stability, so the muscles to support and stabilize as they move through motion,
Mm.
right? So when you are when you want to improve your health, it's important to look at mobility, because if you don't have mobility, you will eventually lose your independence. We talked about it in an episode before, but that corridor, right? That corridor of life, the walls start to close in when you lose mobility. So if you are ignoring mobility and you are focusing on the aesthetic, you are going to end up potentially injured, or you're going to limit your ability to function and enjoy your life, right?
Well said. Young lifters out there, I hope you're listening.
Yeah. Okay, number 4.
Yes.
This is a big one. This is probably one of the most important ones.
Yeah.
And this is one that we need to check ourselves often, right?
Oftenly. Yeah.
Oftenly. Yeah. Is
Yeah.
that even a word?
I don't know. It is now.
It is now. Okay. Obsessive focus on appearance.
Yeah. And this is everybody has been there because we all have things about our bodies that we really like and then things that we don't, and depending on where you're at mentally, you might not give yourself the necessary grace to accept where you are in your journey. More than anything, when it comes to adjusting body composition, when it comes to an aesthetic goal is basically anything where you're looking at the appearance changing. So increasing the size of your legs, if you're a girl, you want to increase the size of your butt or slim your waist. You're a guy that wants to improve your chest, for confidence or self-esteem purposes. You gotta learn to love the process of improving and also loving the body that you're in at the stage you're at. Because what you will end up doing is reaching these goals and realizing that it's not enough to fulfill you if that's all that your pursuit is. And guess what, guys? We're not gonna be able to look like six pack to the day that we die. You know what I mean? Um when if you're a woman, you're gonna and you want to have kids, you're gonna get pregnant. You know what I mean? And it might be more difficult for you to get back into shape after that.
Your
And,
body changes.
and that's fine. You know what I mean? If you're a dude and your metabolism slows down, that's something that both sexes experience. But um for guys, especially the beer belly and all these sort of things that come around, understanding how these things and the habits that go into getting yourself out of shape and remembering to adjust as your body adjusts, as you move forward. So, nothing wrong with having aesthetic goals. But if it, like anything, if you become obsessive to the point where it's affecting your mental well being, it's important to check that.
Of course, but not just your mental well-being, but your physical well-being,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
I always subscribe to the whole concept that if you chase good health, eventually aesthetics do follow. And it's just how long does that take?
Yeah,
It only is going to happen when it's supposed to happen.
100%. It's way easier when you accept the process one is going to take long. You know what I mean? That
It's a lifestyle change.
this is not a short term fix, and this is something that I'm embarking on, mixed in with habitually changing these habits that we've talked about for the first couple episodes and implementing these things into your life, that the aesthetic will come, and we touched on it with the other things, the extreme diets, the excessive cardio, all these sort of things can get you to lose weight, but we're talking about the quality of that weight loss. We're talking about the quality of life that you're going to be living at that point. It's the physical repercussions, the mental repercussions, that hyper focus on appearance and aesthetic. Put that into check. You know what I mean? As opposed to I when I think about my aesthetic goals, I realize that I want to maximize this time because I'm only gonna be this age once. So I want to maximize as much of my resources that I have and my time that I have to obtaining the best physique that I can, so that when I am older, I can be like, you know what, not only can I speak from the place that I've been there, but also say that I really gave it my all to understanding what it takes to be in that position, you know, and I don't go into it naive. And I think that's what a lot of people do is they go into these things naive and expecting, not realizing what it really means like to be low body fat, you know.
It's not fun.
It's not fun. You talked about that before.
Yeah. Okay, so neglecting, this leads us to our last point, number 5.
Mhm.
Neglecting your mental and emotional health.
Yeah.
And you might be doing this without realizing it. You have to remember that exercise is an added stress to your body. And if other things are not balanced in your life, you're just going to add stress that you can't handle. And that is going to end up um, looking like like you mentioned, a change in your mood, right? Energy levels, not being able to devote the time to relationships that actually help with your overall well-being, right? Not spending time in the community or not having a sense of community.
Family, friends. Yeah.
I think if you have a goal in mind and you know you have to be really strict and you're gonna have to say no to social events and uh, potentially not spend enough time with your spouse or your kids, excuse me, then make that a short period of time,
Yeah.
knowing that you have to have these things in your life.
You can look at it from the perspective, I like to think of it, I'm a visual guy, so I like to think of it like a teeter-totter. So if I got too much things on one end of the spectrum, that's gonna throw off a whole bunch of other stuff on the other. You know, so if I'm spending whatever it is that you're willing to give up and sacrifice, you gotta be the person that decides that. There are people that put all of their eggs into their career and all that, and maybe they're in a position to do that because there isn't a spouse to think about, there isn't kids to think about. But as things change, you know, is there a timeline on that for you? Is that something that you're willing to sacrifice even with, you know, kids? Have these sort of conversations with yourself and distinguish whether or not that's something you're willing to put on put up for put up on the chopping block. You know, and
You
if
might
it,
have to have a discussion with a professional about
yeah,
these things.
yeah, to see what your relationship with these goals are, you know. But with a lot of podcasts that I've heard with like driven men is um finding that balance is one of the most difficult things. We're not where this is not an easy thing to you just wake up one day, you're like, I figured it out. This takes years of doing things, seeing how it may affect other people, and then adjusting from there and finding the balance. But it is worth that foresight going into it when we take it from a perspective of aesthetic and the effects it can have on mental well-being, to give it the respect it deserves and keeping those time frames shorter, to keep those hormones in check, and also just how you're feeling overall.
For sure. There's a concept that I learned going through the NCI education, and I really like it. It's something that's helped a lot when I'm working with clients or even with my own personal fitness, but it's called the triangle of awareness. It's super important to know what your objectives are. And here's the visual, there's a triangle, and at each point, it represents either aesthetic, performance, or longevity. And you ask yourself, what am I, what is my main focus at this point in my life? And then you place your dot in the triangle closest to what you're focused on the most. So, you, for example, if you want all three, you can't get complete performance, complete aesthetic, and complete longevity. You can't get all three at once. It's not going to happen. An example of aesthetic would be, okay, I want to be fitness
220,
model.
yeah, 220 lean, stage ready, thinking bodybuilding competition,
Exactly.
sub 5% body fat.
And that bodybuilding example also blends into performance just because the performance is the aesthetic. But if we're talking about performance in a sport like sprinting,
Running 100
running,
meters,
or running a marathon, or swimming, or whatever,
powerlifting, being
right?
able to squat, deadlift, bench above 1,000 pounds.
You have to sacrifice longevity for sure, and also aesthetics,
Yeah.
right? Because, for example, that power lifter or
The
the
body type.
strong man, you know, weight will move weight. So
Yes.
sometimes you have to be extra fluffy
Yeah.
to win that competition,
Yeah.
right? So choosing exactly where in that triangle you want to be is absolutely crucial. If longevity is your goal, then you're not going to be working out for 2 hours, 6 days a week, because that doesn't lead to longevity.
Mhm.
Now, if your goal is aesthetics and you're dieting and working out 1.5 hours a day for 5 days a week, then that makes sense. Okay, so that's your goal. That's what you got to do. Diet also comes along with all these three,
Mhm.
because to maintain the energy to compete in performance, you have to be eating adequately. Remember Michael Phelps when he won all those medals in that
10
Olympics?
10,000 calories, something insane
Something
like that.
crazy like 10 to
Yeah.
12,000 calories a day.
But he was also working out, I think, like 3 or 4 times a day.
That's the point.
Something insane like
If
that.
you're chasing aesthetics
Yeah.
and performance and you're trying to work out that much to compete at that level,
Having some flapjacks and some
you're
bacon
going to
and
have
some
to do that. You
yeah.
can't be eating like keto
Yeah.
and you know who
You're little you'll drown. You'll drop dead in the pool. You won't have any sort of energy to
CrossFit athletes had this problem
mm,
because there was
mm,
this very
aesthetic.
cult like thing where they had to be eating paleo, right? Like they were pushing the
Oh, I didn't know
paleo
this. I didn't
diet.
even know this.
Yeah.
Paleo is like
So
the
basically,
cavemen.
yes, anything that is comes out of the ground,
Yeah,
you can eat.
right.
Anything that walks or comes out of the ground, you can eat. So you're not eating um you're definitely not eating a lot of carbs, basically. They were very
Mm.
carb low.
Oh my god, I
But then
can't
you're doing
imagine
something
doing.
like CrossFit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So energy dependent. It's
Yes.
pretty much all that.
So until some of these other um, educated nutritionists came in and said, hey, listen, if you want to win the CrossFit Games,
Yeah,
you've got to add carbs in and you've got to eat this way. And so that's an example,
yeah.
right? So, triangle of awareness. Try it at
I love
home.
this.
Think about what your aspirations are,
Mhm.
and then look at what it takes nutrition wise and training to 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 achieve those specific goals.
I love that we're ending on this one, because it's something you can use. Those other things are like symptoms of focusing on aesthetic at the expense of your health. This is something you can also use at any point in your life to adjust your goals, because
Shift your focus.
shift your focus to, okay, I'm at this age in my life. How much time is it going to take for me to dedicate daily to do? Is that something that's even feasible for me? If the answer is yes, go for it. You know what I mean? Push, put, do what you got to do. But understand the sacrifices that are gonna come for that. So social gatherings, maybe not being able to be uh present with your friends for certain events. Um, you know what I mean? And then as your responsibilities go up, and you have a family and you have these things, do that same thing again. Are you willing
Maybe it's
to sacrifice?
longevity at this point,
Yeah,
right?
love
Think
that.
about the person that becomes so body focused, body dysmorphia, let's say,
Yeah,
or borderline potentially becoming anorexic,
yeah.
okay? Having anorexia. If that's your problem. Then shift your focus to performance. If you can shift your focus to performance, all of a sudden, now you've got to eat enough
To be able
to
to
fuel your
lift.
performance,
Yeah.
right? And that can be a huge game changer for you in correcting your mental and emotional well-being.
Yeah. Putting you in a better space.
Exactly.
Wow. Really liked this one today. Hopefully that we had some nuggets like always for you to sink your teeth into. Let us know in the comments for the Netflix documentary if there are other things that we should watch or look at that you would like our opinion on. And other than that, thank you for traveling beyond reps and sense.